The year 1960 marks the beginning of a European story filled with strange facts. A man named Henri Delaunay, in 1927 as the Secretary General of the French Football Federation, made the first proposal to FIFA to organize a continental competition for European teams. This idea was revived after he became the first Secretary General of UEFA following its establishment, which led to the creation of the European Nations Cup, with the first tournament held in 1960. In the early stages of the competition, the entry fee for teams wishing to participate was only 200 Swiss francs, reflecting the simplicity and humble beginnings of the tournament. The story of the competition started with representatives from each European nation battling against one another to make their mark in history. The first edition of the competition took place in France, where they hosted a multi-team contest. The Soviet Union's national team began the registration process and became the first champion of the tournament. But as we delve deeper into the history of the competition, we encounter some unusual events that perhaps only happened once in history. These strange events began right from the outset of the competition. In the knockout stages of the first tournament, the two teams that failed to reach the final competed in a third-place playoff. The host nation, France, was set to face Czechoslovakia to secure third place in front of their home crowd. But this was not to be, as Czechoslovakia won 2-0 and claimed third place. The surprising part comes when we learn that Václav Bubník, a Czechoslovak player who scored one of the goals in this match, went on to win a bronze medal at the 1964 Olympics, but not in football, rather in ice hockey. Václav Bubník was actually a skilled ice hockey player who had earned medals for his country in that sport, yet he also played football for his national team and displayed one of his best performances in the 1960 competition. After the final and the Soviet Union's victory, Viktor Ponedelnik, a prominent Soviet player, said in an interview, "My surname in Russian means Monday." I remember that the final match was held on a Sunday at 10 p.m., and reporters were hoping the match would go to extra time so they could use my surname as the headline for their news. But this never happened, and we finished the game in 90 minutes. He also mentioned the events after their victory, saying, "After winning, we were invited to a place near the Eiffel Tower where we were treated to a grand reception. While we were there, we suddenly noticed Santiago Bernabeu, the president of Real Madrid, who praised us and was willing to buy half of the players for his club on the spot. But we avoided further discussions on the matter." 4 years later, thousands of kilometers away in Spain, the second European Championship tournament was held. Spain, taking full advantage of its hosting rights, managed to cement its name as the golden nation of this tournament and gifted the European Cup to the country and its people. Spain, as the champion of this edition, employed specific tactics in their gameplay. Jesus Maria Pereira, a Spanish forward, recalled the tactical discussions before their final match against the Soviet Union. Villalonga, our coach, drew a football field in the sand, using stones to represent us and pine cones to represent the Soviet Union. He convinced us that the stones were stronger than the pine cones, so we would win. One of the strange events of that period involved the peculiar rules of the Danish national team. They had Ole Madsen in their attack, who had an outstanding performance, scoring 11 goals in the tournament. After the competition, he was offered a chance to join Barcelona, but he rejected the offer because of the Danish national team rules, which required players to play for amateur clubs in order to be eligible for the national team. In Italy, during the semi-final of Euro 1968, a historic and extraordinary event took place between two football giants, Italy and the Soviet Union. For Italy, this match was about revenge, while for the Soviet Union, it was an opportunity to repeat their past victory. After a 1-0 defeat to the Soviet Union in 1966, Italy was wounded and ready for revenge, meeting the Soviets once again on their home turf in the quest to reach the final of Euro 1968. The Italian team, playing on home soil, had to give it all. The eyes of all the fans of the Catenaccio system were on their captain. Throughout the history of the Italian national football team, the captain's armband had always been worn by a hero of the country. Facchetti, the left back of Italy, was the embodiment of courage and a hero for his country. For the first time in history, he played beyond his usual role. As a left back, tasked with defending in a three-man defense line, he would venture forward, attacking the opposition's goal and even occasionally finding his way into the midfield and the opponent's penalty area. This type of play, risky as it was would later be known as the wing-back role, a position and play style invented by Facchetti, the captain of Italy. Facchetti, who coincidentally wore the number 10 shirt due to alphabetical order, was one of the first famous number 10s in football history alongside Pelé. During the match, amidst poor weather conditions and numerous injuries, the two teams fought for 90 minutes, only to end in a 0-0 draw. But that was not the end. The winner of the match would be determined by a coin toss, a rare and unprecedented event in football history. 68,000 fans in the stadium, along with players and staff on the bench, all focused their attention on the tunnel entrance of the stadium. The captains of both teams, along with the referee, went to the locker room to determine the winner of this historic match through a coin toss. This event had occurred years earlier in the Champions League during a match between Liverpool and Bologna, but it was the first time in the history of the European Nations League that such an occurrence had taken place. The captain of Italy, by choosing the lion side of the coin, gifted victory to Italy and sent them to the final. This battle not only represented the fighting spirit and courage of both teams, but also served as a reminder that in football, every moment can be decisive. Small decisions and unpredictable events can change the course of history and create legendary stories. On July 8, 1968, the final match between Italy and Yugoslavia was held. The game ended 1-1 after regular time, and the champion was determined 2 days later in a replay. In the first game, the stadium was filled with Italian fans. But in the second game, only half the stadium was occupied, due to the dissatisfaction of Italian fans with their team. Italy's coach, Valcareggi, who was very pragmatic, was solely focused on winning. In a surprising move, unlike other teams that didn't make changes to their lineups, he substituted more than half of his team with B-team players. In contrast to the Soviet Union, who took to the field with their previous lineup, Italy entered with a completely different formation. This time, Italy won 2-0, achieving victory and claiming their first European Championship title. As per the tradition of this tournament, 4 years later in Belgium, the German team claimed the championship. However, the next European Championship brought another strange event. In 1976, in Yugoslavia, which was the host country, Czechoslovakia and West Germany reached the final of the tournament. Czechoslovakia was a team that performed very unusually. Their coach, Josef, made many of his decisions based on consultations with his assistant coach, Dr. Josef Venglos, who held a PhD in pure physics and made strange yet influential decisions. In a peculiar move, he invited Andras, a tall forward, to play as a central defender. This decision seemed odd to everyone, but it worked brilliantly. Andros scored 4 goals and was one of the key factors in his country's progression to the final. As we move further into the history of this tournament, things get even stranger. On the morning of the final match, a meeting took place between the representatives of the German and Czechoslovak football federations, which would go down in history as one of the most important meetings in football. The Czechoslovak representative made a proposal to the German representative, suggesting that if the match ended in a draw, the winner should be determined by penalty kicks. The German representative, aware of the Soviet Union's reputation as a rough team, knew that if the match went to a replay, his players could be injured and unavailable for the final. Therefore, he accepted the proposal, and for the first time in the history of the European Nations League, it was decided that penalty kicks would be used to determine the winner. However, this suggestion from Czechoslovakia was very carefully planned. The team had spent the day before the final practicing penalty kicks, as suggested by their coach, Dr. Josef Venglos, who had a PhD in pure physics and often made strange yet effective decisions. After the proposal was approved, the German representative informed his team in the locker room, where it was met with strong objections from the German star Beckenbauer. The final match began. It was an evenly matched battle, and as the game went on, neither team seemed able to break the deadlock. After the regular time ended, the match moved to penalty kicks. The stress and anxiety were evident in the players' eyes as they prepared to take their penalties. The first 7 penalties were successfully converted, but in the 8th penalty, Uli Hoeneß of West Germany missed, sending the ball high above the goal. Now it was Czechoslovakia's turn, and Antonín Panenka stepped up to take the shot. He only needed to score to secure the championship for his team. Panenka was under immense pressure, as missing this shot could result in punishment for disrespecting the communist regime that was in power in Czechoslovakia at the time. However, with remarkable calmness, Panenka took the shot and delicately chipped the ball right into the center of the goal. This iconic Panenka penalty secured the victory for Czechoslovakia and marked the beginning of a new era in penalty-taking techniques. The Germans were stunned and accused Panenka of disrespecting the opposing team. But Panenka later explained that his decision to take that shot was made in the moment and that he had no intention of disrespecting anyone. The next edition of the tournament was held in 1980 in Italy. In the 1960s and 1970s, major sports events were seeking ways to attract more viewers. The media and advertising played a crucial role in this, and one of the key innovations was the introduction of mascots. After using mascots effectively in the 1972 Olympics and the 1966 World Cup, they introduced the first official mascot for the European Championship, named Euros 80. This mascot was aimed at increasing the popularity of the event, particularly among younger audiences. The mascot chosen for Italy was Pinocchio, the wooden boy from the beloved children's story, known worldwide. After their defeat in the previous final, West Germany triumphed and won the championship, becoming the first team to win the European Championship for the second time. However, aside from this sweet victory, the final match against Belgium was marred by a physical altercation between the fans of the two teams, leaving behind unpleasant scenes. In 1984, France hosted the tournament for the second time in history. This edition marked a significant change in the competition's name, as UEFA decided to officially rename the tournament from the European Championship to Euro. From this point onward, the tournament would be known simply as Euro. As part of their efforts to attract more viewers and generate additional revenue, France introduced a mascot for the event. Reflecting the national symbol of their team, the rooster, France unveiled their mascot, named Penaud. The name Penaud was a playful reference to the French slang for a penalty kick. Penaud was the first mascot to accompany a team to victory, as France won the tournament. After their victory, Michel Platini recalled how the coach had warned the team to do everything they could to avoid a penalty shootout, as he was particularly fearful of penalties. 4 years later, West Germany hosted Euro 1988, during a time when Dutch football was dominating the scene. The Germans, hoping to repeat their previous success, had their mascot, a rabbit named Bernie, accompanying them throughout the tournament. But despite their efforts, they could not go all the way. Meanwhile, the Netherlands had already made history by winning the 1988 European Cup with PSV Eindhoven, and now it was time for their national team to make their mark on the Euro. An unexpected event occurred, however, when France, the previous champions, failed to qualify for the tournament, leaving them as a major absence in the competition. Euro 1988 was also unique in that it was the only tournament where no red cards were issued and no match ended in a goalless draw. During a match between the Netherlands and Ireland, an incident shocked the media. A goal scored by Marco van Basten, which many believed was offside, was allowed to stand. However, the Irish team, struggling with financial issues, did not contest the goal. They were forced to leave the tournament early due to their financial situation, and as a result, they accepted the controversial goal without protest and quickly left the competition. The Netherlands progressed to the semi-finals, where they faced the host nation, West Germany. This match was more than just a football game. It was a clash of two nations with a long history of animosity due to World War II. The atmosphere was charged with emotion, and the match was one of the most intense and physical of the tournament. The Netherlands triumphed with a 2-1 victory, but the aftermath of the game was marred by a controversial act from Dutch player Ronald Koeman. After the match, Koeman swapped shirts with German player Olaf Thon, a common practice in football, but given the tension surrounding the game, this act stirred significant controversy. Koeman later apologized to the German fans, recognizing the emotional context and the sensitivity of the moment. In the final, the Netherlands faced the Soviet Union, aiming for their first ever European Championship title. The Dutch team achieved their goal, defeating the Soviets and lifting the trophy. This marked the last time the Soviet Union participated in the tournament under its old name, as the country was in the process of breaking up into separate republics, and they would not return as the Soviet Union in future editions. Just 4 years later, in 1992, one of the most surprising and eventful tournaments in European football history unfolded. Sweden hosted Euro 1992, and in keeping with the tradition, the mascot Bernie was retained. This time, Bernie was dressed in the blue and yellow colors of Sweden's national flag. The tournament was initially scheduled to be held in Spain, but due to Spain's upcoming hosting of the Olympics, the hosting rights were transferred to Sweden. 8 teams qualified for the tournament, including the Soviet Union, which was dissolved and replaced by the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS, marking their first appearance as independent countries. One of the most unexpected events of Euro 1992 was the qualification of Denmark, a team that had not earned a spot through the regular qualification process. Due to the disqualification of Yugoslavia because of its civil war, UEFA granted Denmark a place in the tournament, as they had finished just behind Yugoslavia in the qualification stage. The team's coach, Richard Müller-Nielsen, was known for his highly defensive playing style, which led to a fallout with some key players. One such player, Danish legend Michael Laudrup, refused to play for the team, despite an attempt by Müller-Nielsen to re-invite him. Laudrup even expressed that he wouldn't watch Denmark's matches on TV. The Danish national team was in disarray, and after poor performances in their first 2 group stage matches, they had little hope of advancing. The players were known to be spending time playing golf rather than focusing on intensive training. However, there was one player who didn't indulge in the golf sessions or neglect the practice field: Henning Jørgensen, who had a very personal reason for his absence from the recreational activities. His daughter was battling leukemia, and he frequently traveled back and forth between Sweden and Denmark for her care, only returning for the matches. Denmark's final group stage match was against a star-studded French team, featuring players like Didier Deschamps, Laurent Blanc, and Eric Cantona. Despite being the underdogs, Denmark shocked everyone by defeating France 2-1, with one of their goals being controversial for having been scored from an offside position. This victory was crucial and allowed Denmark to progress further in the tournament. The day before their match against the Netherlands, they casually spent their time at Burger King, without much focus on the upcoming game. But to everyone's surprise, the match ended in a draw and went to penalties. In an extraordinary performance by goalkeeper Peter Schmeichel, who saved a penalty from Marco van Basten, Denmark advanced to the final, creating a huge shockwave throughout European football. In the final, Denmark was up against a powerful German team. The night before the match, Denmark once again indulged in a carefree evening in their hotel. On the pitch, the Danish players resorted to a controversial tactic. Throughout the game, they repeatedly passed the ball back to Schmeichel, who would then collect it with his hands to waste time and run down the clock. This time-wasting tactic ultimately led to a rule change in football, as it was seen as an unsporting way to exploit the game's laws. However, in a bizarre twist of fate, Denmark's match-winning moment came from Henning Jørgensen, a player who had been dealing with personal challenges during the tournament. Jørgensen, who had been traveling back and forth between Sweden and Denmark due to his daughter's battle with leukemia, had been mostly absent from team activities, but played a pivotal role in the final. With a clever handball, unnoticed by the referee, Jørgensen scored the winning goal and secured Denmark's first ever European championship. Meanwhile, after the conclusion of Euro 1992, a candid interview with English player Alan Smith revealed some of the chaos within the England national team. According to Smith, the main reason behind England's poor performance in the tournament was their manager Graham Taylor. Smith criticized Taylor for his lack of awareness of player conditions, pointing out that players like Paul Gascoigne were selected despite being injured, and players like Chris Waddle and Ian Wright were excluded from the squad despite their excellent form. Smith also revealed the disorganization within the England camp. The team had no televisions, no way to contact their families except for one phone that had a limited time window, and their preparations were lacking in nearly every way. This chaotic environment, paired with injuries to key players like John Barnes and Lee Dixon, contributed to England's disappointing performance at the tournament. In what was a turbulent time for English football, the failure to perform at Euro 1992 only added to the pressure and criticism surrounding Graham Taylor and his management of the national team. In his 2018 book Heads Up, Alan Smith described the English national team as being more like a dog and duck than the legendary Three Lions, due to their disorganized and chaotic performance during the tournament. This was particularly evident in their group stage match against France, where left-back Stuart Pearce, nicknamed Psycho, was involved in a violent clash with French defender Basile Boli, resulting in Pearce's bloodied cheek. However, the referee failed to call a foul, which caused Pearce to protest vehemently for 20 minutes. England ended up with only 2 points from the group stage and were eliminated, becoming one of the biggest disappointments of the tournament. After the 1994 World Cup, Euro 1996 arrived, with England hosting the tournament. The mascot of the tournament, previously Bernie the Bear, was changed to a lion, symbolizing England. One of the most significant moments before the tournament began was the surprising exclusion of Italian star Roberto Baggio from the final squad. Italy, having finished as runners-up in the 1994 World Cup, left Baggio off the roster, and rumors suggested that the exclusion was due to a personal dispute between Baggio and coach Arrigo Sacchi. When the tournament began, Sacchi made another controversial decision by leaving several of his star players on the bench for Italy's opening match, which they lost. In a press conference after the game, Sacchi defended his choices, stating, "I know football is a team game, so if I succeeded with Maradona, I will succeed with Roberto Baggio." However, after Italy's poor performance, Sacchi admitted that his decision to exclude Baggio was based on the player's physical condition, though he also acknowledged that Baggio's missed penalty in the 1994 World Cup final had influenced his decision. Another major controversy occurred during the quarterfinals of Euro 1996, when England faced Spain at Wembley. Spanish media later referred to the match as one of the greatest injustices in football history. In the first half, Spain's Julio Salinas scored a goal after dribbling past English defenders, but it was incorrectly ruled offside by the assistant referee. Later in the second half, Spain scored again, only for the goal to be disallowed, and they had 3 penalty appeals rejected by the referee. Ultimately, England won the match in a penalty shootout, but Salinas was furious after the game, stating, "We played not only against 11 players and 70,000 English fans, but also against 3 referees. This victory was impossible for us." After the tournament, the famous paranormalist Uri Geller, known for his spoon-bending abilities, claimed that his supernatural powers had influenced the outcomes of the tournament. He specifically referred to an incident where Scotland's Gary McAllister missed a penalty, suggesting that he had altered the course of the ball using his powers. While many people dismissed his claims as a joke, Geller insisted that his abilities had played a role in the events of the tournament. In the 2000 European Championship, for the first time in history, 2 countries co-hosted the tournament, the Netherlands and Belgium. They introduced a mythical creature called Benno Loki as the official mascot. This creature, a combination of a lion and a devil, symbolized the partnership between the 2 host nations. Additionally, it alluded to Luxembourg, the 3rd country involved in hosting the UEFA Congress that year. The tournament came with heavy historical significance. Just 5 years earlier, the Heysel Stadium disaster in Brussels, Belgium, had resulted in the tragic deaths of 39 people before the Champions League final between Juventus and Liverpool. This incident was caused by fan riots, which led to the collapse of a stadium wall. In the aftermath, the stadium was rebuilt and renamed the King Baudouin Stadium. UEFA decided to hold one of the opening matches of Euro 2000 in this newly reconstructed venue to demonstrate that safety measures had been implemented. Another significant concern surrounding the tournament was hooliganism, or football-related violence, often linked to rivalries between fan groups. In the 1990s, a fierce rivalry existed between Ajax and Feyenoord in the Netherlands, and there were fears that hooliganism could affect even the final of Euro 2000. Although incidents of hooliganism did occur, it was not the Dutch fans who were primarily involved. The English fans were notably responsible for several violent clashes in cities like Brussels and Charleroi, where they clashed with other fans and the police. As a result, authorities in both the Netherlands and Belgium were forced to increase security measures, and the police were placed on high alert to control the troublemakers. UEFA responded sternly, threatening that England could be expelled from the tournament if such behavior continued. As the tournament progressed, in the semi-finals, France faced Portugal. After 90 minutes, the match went into extra time, and the winner would be determined by the golden goal rule. French striker Zinedine Zidane scored the decisive goal in the 117th minute, sending France to the final. However, the penalty that led to the golden goal was highly controversial. Portugal's players were infuriated by the decision, and key players like Abel Xavier, Nuno Gomes, and Bento received long-term suspensions for their severe protests and for physically pushing the referee. Meanwhile, in the other semi-final, the Netherlands faced Italy. After 90 minutes and extra time, the match went to a penalty shootout, where Italy triumphed and advanced to the final. In the final, held in Rotterdam, the match between France and Italy ended 1-1, and it was decided in extra time. David Trezeguet scored a golden goal in the 103rd minute, securing France's victory and making it the only European championship to be won with a golden goal.